So today, as you've probably heard, we want to talk finance with you. But we want to do this a little differently. Now, we understand that we're talking to a group of young people who are forward-thinking. We went to some of the classes on the tour this morning, and I have to say I was impressed with what I've seen. Now, I've met some of you, I think, before, at Americans for Prosperity, Juliana and I. But we're going to speak to you as such. We're going to share with you what is happening in the world around you and give you some help to understand what you can do. Because as much bad news as you may hear, the good news is that you are the first generations that are going to have a whole bunch of control over what happens to you, your country, the church, and your family. Isn't that good news? Yes. That is equally exciting for Juliana and I. So, as Ms. Randolph mentioned, we own a market research company, Sherlock, and our ministry is Watchmen Action. So our focus is equipping the church to engage the culture by helping young folks like yourself who have a message or a mission with all the tools that you need and the training that you need to make that happen. Because you want lots of people to follow you, you want to get your message out, and then you want to be able to get things done, right? Kind of like school. Teacher tells you you need to get something done, you figure out how you're going to get it done and you're efficient. So we're going to go through some of that this morning, and we want to make sure we leave time for questions. And questions are okay. We will do our best to answer those, but often what we find is that you learn more by being engaged. So we titled this presentation, Building a Better Future. We're going to talk to you guys about parallel economies. What are those? Simply put, those are things outside of the normal economy that you understand today that you can do, whether it is between friends or family or within your community. And as we start today, when we came in and we got the tour, I noticed that the guiding verse for the school is Proverbs 9:10. And it actually fits really well with this teaching. Fear of the Father is the beginning of understanding. We all agree, yes? Here's why that's so important. In Scripture, stewardship over all else is rewarded or punished, right? I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday. Juliana and I are speaking in New York City this summer about prophecy and things like that. We're going to be talking to a lot of adults who aren't saved, okay? And one of the conversations was about, if I'm doing this event, the person that's doing it, why are people trying to be cheap with Jesus? Why are people trying to be cheap with Jesus? Right? And I said, there are some people you need or don't need, but here's the understanding about this. You will all be successful in whatever you choose to do in life because you have an incredible foundation here at Victory Christian Academy, yes? Okay. What you do with what you're blessed with is incredibly important. We're going to let you in on a little secret. All that money you're going to make isn't yours. It belongs to the Father, correct? You are a steward of those funds. What you choose to do with them will not only impact you and your family, but it will have a generational impact. If you as young people look at the world today and you wonder why so many things are wrong with it, I can simply point you back to the conversation that we're having right now. That is a result of bad stewardship that is not ingrained in Scripture, right? So understanding that you are a steward of resources, if you do that part correctly, if I can trust you with a little, I will give you much, right? This is the baseline of that understanding, because once you have that down, and once you understand what your responsibility is biblically, everything else will flow from that. And that's why the guiding verse for this academy is so important. Y'all agree? All right, another one that's important that's up on the screen. A borrower is a servant to the lender. That's Proverbs, and that is true, yes? Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Click right here. So let's go ahead and jump in here. The way things are going economically today, I'll be honest with you, and part of the reason that Julianna and I do this so much is because your future is at stake. And we know that we can make a change or a series of changes to ensure that it is no longer at stake. But that involves work from you too. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. Right?
Yes.
So we always talk about the role of the watchman. Ezekiel 33:6 talks about the fact that we are all watchmen. We are to be talking about what's going on in our community. Everything that RC and I have been doing is about empowering you guys, right? And I always say, at the sound of my voice, once you hear something, it's our responsibility to tell our brothers and sisters, right? Because we need each other to be able to survive. You know, the world will tell you that we're supposed to be competing. I disagree. I think we're supposed to be completing and helping each other and working together. That's why one of the reasons why when I was touring, I was just like, my heart was so warmed watching you guys and watching the teachers interact with you, because most people don't have that opportunity. Like, you guys are so blessed to be here. And you all are just little watchmen, and we're really excited about being able to empower you guys.
Thank you, Julianna. It's so true. So let's start at the start. I hope everybody can see that. We talked about scripture and verse. We talked about the Bible and the word itself. Well, economics as a whole are tied directly back to scripture. Most people don't realize that. So economies in biblical times were relatively straightforward. If I had something that someone needed, I could trade it with them for something they had that I needed. Trade and barter, right? I am a carpenter. You want a house? Well, you have a farm and I need a cow. So for 3 cows, I will build this house for you. Pretty straightforward, right? You guys may do this amongst friends every day. Hey, I have this and I need this. Oh, look here, I need that too. So you do it, right? Trade and barter, biblical principle. As time went on, your next step was the discovery of things like gold and silver. They're like, well, we need a better way to store the exchange or the value of our labor or our service, because not everyone is going to need 3 cows every day for me to build them a house, right? So how do we figure that out? So gold and silver became a method of exchange and a store of value for your labor or specialty. For those of you who have a job now, or you do chores around the house and you are paid for them, right? You are paid what your parents think is fair, at least for now, right? Now, later on, as you get older, you'll be able to negotiate based on your skills, largely learned at this academy, to make more money as a representation of your skill. But keeping it simple, we went from trade and barter to gold and silver. There are foundations here in the 2 things that we just mentioned that you still use today and that you still see today, even though you may not realize it. Surprise, surprise, right? 2 things here, community care and wise planning. So under community care, in the book of Ruth, she's gleaning the fields for Boaz, right? There's a stewardship and a responsibility there. Now, Boaz was protecting her, but she took on the responsibility to make sure those things were done. Joseph stored up because he got the vision of lean years. So in good stewardship, because Father had blessed him with much and was going to do much through him, he took the instruction and the stewardship and prepared for hard times so that when they came, he was able to treat everyone fairly, and he also made sure that everyone got what they needed. Y'all see a theme here so far? Right? Financial or economic responsibility is biblical responsibility. Okay? So, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. Simply put, don't cheat your friends or anybody else. Okay? We see this happen every day. A moment ago, we were talking to you guys about the state of the world and the state of the economy today. Again, it comes back to biblical foundation and good stewardship. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people think it is normal to cheat or lie or steal from someone. We know those things are fundamentally wrong because they're biblically wrong. Here's the good news for you. Not only will you not do it because you've been taught better, but you get to set the example for everyone that you encounter on how they should operate. We have dear friends who are in White Lake, North Carolina. That's in the southeast corner. They're in a little resort town called White Lake. They have an amazing ministry. The story of their church is a complete father story. I mean, just the way that it all came about. But Cameron McGill, the pastor, says something often, and I know he didn't originate it, but it's true. You may be the only Bible some people ever read. What are they going to gather when they do? What are they going to see, right? Because what's happened in society, and this is economic, is that you find people with vast resources who are rude or uncaring or just downright nasty. And then they make the claim that they're a Christian. You know what happens next, right? Well, if that's Christianity, I don't want anything to do with that. And that's the battle that we fight today. The good news, though, a big reason that we're here is because we know you guys can change that.
That's right.
So for 400 years, called the silent years, we didn't have a king. Once upon a time. Can you imagine that we allowed our Father to be our king? And every act that we did, we knew that he was going to judge us. So we were so good as a community of people that for 400 years, we didn't need to have a king. We were doing right by each other, by the brothers and sisters, until it came to a point where they were like, we want a king like other people have a king. We don't want to have a king. We have one king. Our allegiance is to him, right?
Amen to that. So, Julianna, this is a favorite. Now, we're talking to you guys too, but Julianna and I, we've talked about this a lot over the last few years. You guys familiar with the term fiat currency? Raise a hand. Has anybody heard that before? Okay, cool. We got a couple. Anybody got $1 in their pocket? Right? Or something like that? Or you spend? Okay. So those dollars and those coins that you have, or the digital equivalent if you have a debit card or whatever, that is fiat currency. In essence, it's not backed by anything, okay, except the full faith and credit of the United States government. And that's any government around the world. Take that for what you will. All economies, this is one that you should all write down. All economies, regardless of whether they are financial or community or any other, all economies are built on trust. That too is biblical. In the beginning, God created. We are his creation. He tells us, and then Jesus tells us to have faith. And then when we don't, he questions why we don't. Okay? Things to keep in mind. All economies are built on trust. If I gave this young man $1 today, he would take it knowing he could take that $1 and get something else for it. Now, if 2 seconds from now I was to give the $1 he knew it was worth this, he'd be like, you gotta give me something else, man. That's not gonna work for me, right? Because it's not worth anything because the trust is gone. So Julianna, let's take a quick journey. I know you want to walk through this one? Okay.
So we used to be on the gold standard, meaning our money was tied to gold. So we knew exactly how much the buck was. And the reason why it's called a buck is because once upon a time it was made, our money was made from deerskin, okay? In 1913, though, the Federal Reserve was created. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it's not part of the government, it's just an organization, right? And they created what's called the Federal Reserve. And in 1933, gold ownership was restricted. They started saying, oh, you know what, we need to pull back the monies, and the money, real money, is gold. Until 1971, where they decided that we no longer were going to have our monies backed by gold. And that happened literally just a couple months after I was born. So I was watching the United States of America and the decline of what the value of your dollar is. When they say, oh, the prices have gone up, no, your dollar is not worth as much money. Right? Okay, Once upon a time, you could take a gold shekel, right, and buy yourself a suit. Once upon a time, you used to be able to use a shekel to buy a house. Tied to the price of the house was the gold. Today, it takes as much gold to buy a house, meaning the price of gold is stabilized. It's our currency, the fiat currency, that's not stabilized, that has gone down in value. And that's the reason why RC and I are really big on alternative currencies, having parallel economies, and having currency that is actual gold.
You want to give them the surprise now, or should we wait till later? Oh, we'll do it after, okay. You guys have to wait we have a surprise for you at the end. So, Juliana, you covered a lot of ground here. Thinking context-wise, it used to be that a US dollar was worth the equivalent in gold, right? So that's the gold era. Or you hear the gold standard, right? Then you fast forward, and we got to 1913 in the Federal Reserve, but the history buffs in the room will appreciate what I'm going to share. Traditionally in the United States, central banks, a hub, which is what the Federal Reserve is, it is another central bank of the United States, were frowned upon. As a matter of fact, President Andrew Jackson took a bullet to the chest over fighting a central bank because he said, if we do this, the value of our money will implode. People are trying to control us, and we don't want that. That is not how the United States is built. So he fought central banks. Eventually they got through, but by the time you get to 1913, the Federal Reserve is created, and now the monetary system is not technically controlled by the US government. Did you guys know that? As Juliana said, it's the Federal Reserve. There's nothing federal about it. There sure isn't any reserve in it. They print it digitally. They just say, how much do we need? And then they run the meter. So if you fast forward 20 years from that moment, the reason I'm doing this, because Juliana did a good job of walking through, it's so important that you guys understand what's happened so that when it is tried again, you know exactly what's coming. In 1933, prior to that, you could own gold as much as you wanted. In 1933, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said you can no longer own it. As a matter of fact, we're going to confiscate it from you. You have to turn it in, or we're going to come and get it.
Wow.
Between the years of 1933 and 1970, you could not own it. Sounds crazy today, right? Because you pretty much own whatever you want. You want to buy crypto, we'll get to that later. You want to do any of these things, you're free to do it, right? If you wanted to buy gold, you could go down the street and buy some. But prior to 1970, you couldn't do that. So there was 40 years where you could not own one of the best barometers and storages of wealth in the history of creation. There's a lesson in that, in paying attention. In a self-governing society, you're in the chapter of the book where it's self, okay? And you guys are watchmen, as Juliana mentioned. So in 1971, President Richard Nixon and his group decide, well, we're just gonna untangle the dollar from gold. And we're just gonna say, hey, you know, it's no longer backed by gold, and have fun. I'm saying it may give you a chuckle, but that is literally what happened. And so that gets you to the point where the value of $1 in 1913 was $1. Today, the value of $1, or the buying power of $1, is about 4 cents. Oh, I know. That always gets the same response, whether it's adults or young adults. Think about that for a minute. In 1913, if we were to go back 100 plus years, and you had a US dollar with Washington on it, that would get you the equivalent of $1 worth of gold. If you went to the bank, or silver, if you go and look at pictures online of silver notes or gold notes, it will say, to the bearer on demand. So if you took it to a bank, they would give you the equivalent in gold or silver. If you look at the dollar today, it says Federal Reserve note. Backed by the full faith and credit of the United States, blah, 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 blah. But its buying power is equal to 4 cents. So in just over 100 years, the dollar's lost all of its buying power. All right, everybody got that? That stings a little bit, I know. That's all right. There's good news on the horizon. So what has this led to? The modern economic challenges. You see some of these in your everyday life. You guys heard about the national debt? Okay, right here it's like 35 trillion now, or it's probably gone up since I said that. It's just the way it goes. All this debt, right? And then they say, well, the solution is we'll just print more money. Because hey, why not? It's fine, you have more money. Well, when you do that, guess what happens to the value of the money they print? Very, you guys are great, right? Look at that. So, endless money printing. So, inflation. Quick way to understand inflation. Inflation, simply put, is too many dollars chasing too few things. Well, RC, why? Could they just print, Juliana, could they just print more money? Sure, but it's not worth anything. So when inflation happens, it's too much money chasing too few things. You guys probably don't do much with housing, right? You notice the housing market, the prices are up and people can't really afford it, right? There's too few houses available and too much potential money trying to chase. Inflation happens, which means the rate of inflation increases. Okay.
In conclusion, it's thievery of our ability to buy what it is that we wish to purchase. Inflation is thievery.
Yes, it is. Yes, y'all familiar with what taxes are?
Yes.
You guys do, I'm talking to the teachers and the administrators. You guys do such a good job with these young people. Thank you. Like seriously, can you give them a round? Thank you. Isn't that something? Y'all know what tax is, right? So inflation is a stealth tax on your wealth, so to speak. Okay, digital vulnerability, obviously, most of you have phones and stuff like that. Some of you may be into cryptocurrency or digital banking. Anytime that happens, you're potentially vulnerable. We're gonna get to Bitcoin in a minute. So, and then your loss of privacy. We won't go down this road. We're not gonna go full down the rabbit hole, but a centralized digital currency. In essence, the government telling you, we can do a better job of managing this than you talking to each other and exchanging is a real thing. And we'll get to that a little bit later, but it's a danger. So let's take a minute with parallel economies. You guys can see up on the screen here. We won't belabor you with all the details, but there are 4 categories you should think about. The first one is microeconomies. Those are community driven. So what we always say when we teach adults about the potential for economic disaster or other related disasters is we say, once the lights go off or something goes sideways, all economies instantly become local. Okay? What are microeconomies? Microeconomies could be your home. What do you do as a family economically together? Your community. When something happens, or even if something never happens, how well are you working as a community of people in your neighborhood to exchange value? Do you know if the person that lives in your neighborhood or down the street from you sells the very thing that you'd like to buy? Right? Instead of going to the big box store, you may be able to go to the guy down the street who could really use your help and actually lives in your community. Right? So, and this school, by the way, probably a number of projects going on. This school is a microeconomy. Right? Your genius is an economic driver on how much value people place on Victory Christian Academy. You all are smart and well-spoken and well-mannered, and you know what's going on because you know what a tax is, right? What could you put together economically that is worth something that people would buy to continue to grow Victory Christian Academy, microeconomy? Alternative currency, we talked about that, right? We talked about gold and silver, trade and barter. We'll come back to gold backs here in a second. Methods of exchange outside of the normal system, right? We're going to get to a story of a city in Utah that is largely on gold backs. It's an amazing story. Food co-ops. So if you want something today, you probably go to the grocery store. Now, if you were trying to figure out where that food came from, you'd probably take an hour. But there could be someone that you know that is within driving distance of you who owns or runs a farm. And you could buy directly from them. Or when they do the Saturday morning Farmers markets, you guys all familiar with those? Those are people who live close to you that sell the same thing you could get in the store, but you could buy it from them instead. And the more you do that, the more they can produce and provide. And then when you tell 10 friends, the same thing happens, right?
Basically what RC is saying is, if we take our monies, right, think of your money as voting, and we start buying locally from each other, we build our local economy. We build the small farmers up. We build the person who makes the widget that we want to be able to buy. It becomes hyper-local, and that way we can support each other. So having community and having a means of exchange between us as a community of people, which could be different than the next community, right? That's really important for us. Think of food. Food is also like money. You can trade with food, can you not? You can trade with gold. You could trade with, your jewelry, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. If you say that we support people that are locally, what will happen to the other businesses that are not local?
That's a great question. Hopefully they would become smaller. Everything has become big box store. Everything has been consolidated. All the monies is going into one group. Instead of going to like Publix, for example, which is one big group, right? You go to your local farmer's market. You're supporting your local farmer. You're not supporting Publix and the money that they're making. You're actually giving the money directly to the farmer, and they're the ones that really need it. So we want to be hyper-local. We don't want to have these huge box stores. Like, it's convenient to be able to go to a Walmart, but I would much rather go to my neighbors and buy the things that I can buy because they made it, right?
To add on to what Juliana said, because this is such a great question, have you all noticed that the quality of the stuff you buy today is worse than it was a year ago? Yeah. And this is coming from people who are avowed capitalists, right? We believe in a capitalist system where people's ingenuity and talent and what they build, they should be rewarded for it. And the better job you do of that, the more money you should make, and you're going to be good stewards, right? What happens when you have an over-concentration in a Walmart is they look at the situation, they say, well, you're going to buy it anyway. Quality doesn't need to be that great. To Juliana's point, if we do things locally, they're going to get the message. Walmart has to report, because they're publicly traded on the stock market, right? You could buy stock at Walmart. They have to report their earnings every quarter. In their last earnings report, they said, we're starting to feel the pinch. People are making buying decisions. They're more tight with their money. We're going to have to improve quality. It works. All right, let's keep rolling here so we got time for questions. So we talked about parallel economies in action. Quickly, we'll run through these. So Alpine, Utah, which is actually the home of the gold-backed notes, 80 businesses in the city of Alpine actually take gold back. So they still take other forms of currency.
We're going to let you guys touch it.
Yeah.
And we're going to bring some to you. I actually forgot them today. But you guys are all going to get one of these guys.
Yeah, you guys are going to We told the team at Goldback that we were coming to speak to you guys today, and they were so excited. We said, we're going to give them all Goldbacks. So let us know if you need more.
Touch it, it's okay.
If you guys have not seen the movie Homestead from Angel Studios yet, Goldbacks are actually in that movie.
Yep.
They show them as a method of exchange in a time of difficulty.
Yep.
So Alpine has a great story. They do a lot of commerce just in Goldbacks. They're in a parallel economy.
So because these gold backs are attached to gold, each one of them has gold in it. The half is worth about $3 and change, $3.14.
Yeah.
And then the dollar one's worth about $6 now. They go up in value. So if gold gets reevaluated and goes up, your gold backs will go up too. Yes, Ms. Randolph.
Okay, when I students remember, Ms. Julianna gave me those. I think it was they were worth $2 or something, and now this is like about a week or two later.
That's all it takes.
And it's that same dollar now, that was not a dollar, but it's worth now more.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, it's going to go up even more because of what's going on with the fiat currency, and there's more. So we'll talk during the presentation.
Yeah, you guys are seeing this in action and value increase in action. So we chuckle about them, but Amish communities, if you've ever seen the folks, if you go out in the country, there are horses and everything, best builders of furniture in the world by far, by the way. I mean, their products are great. I've lived all over the country. Julianna's lived all over the country too. You find yourself a good Amish community, you'll eat good, you'll get great furniture, and people are generally pretty friendly. They are a great example of a parallel economy. They operate nearly independent from everything. And they've been doing it for generations, and they're highly efficient in doing so. And by the way, in a capitalist society, they have done exceedingly well for themselves by sticking to the rules. Because like you, they believe in good stewardship and biblical principles. Okay. Homeschool co-ops. So Victory Christian Academy, when I look at this school, it feels like that. Right? It's an academy, yes, but it has the feel to it. You guys are actually in one of these situations where you have smaller classes, more attention, you have great instructors and great administrators, right? That's a blessing, and that's a parallel economy too. The people who created this thought different. And then local farms we talked about a minute ago, right? So we talked about goldbacks. 1,000 businesses right now around the country are actually using these in active trade. Somebody accepts them, you can go, and they say, hey, it's going to be this much, how much in gold back? They tell you, you exchange it, there you go. Right? Guess who's not in the middle of it? Uncle Sam. Who'd have thunk that y'all were smart enough, like us, to actually do things without his assistance? All right.
So I want to give you one word. It's called fungible. Fungible. How do you make gold fungible? Fungible means usable. So the gold back that you're seeing allows gold to be used easily.
Julianna hit the nail on the head there with gold back. So Bitcoin, this came up earlier. Let's talk a little bit. Let's get something out of the way right away. Cryptocurrency is not Bitcoin and vice versa. They are two different things. We'll quickly explain why. Bitcoin was created with a limited supply. There will only ever be 21 million of them. Ever. Okay? And it is decentralized. That means that no government or anyone else can stop a transaction from happening. If something is centralized, like the Federal Reserve, guess who decides how much your dollar is worth? Ain't you. But if this young man and I choose to exchange in Bitcoin, we agree on the value, the exchange is instant, and guess who's not in the middle? I say it. I'm so smart, I love it. Right? So, we've talked to people about, we have a very good friend, CJ Constantinos has a company called People's Reserve. He did very well in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and now he's a strong Christian young family, he lives in Southwest Florida. He has dedicated himself to helping folks like us and like you to be able to leverage Bitcoin to do things, whether it's buy houses or something like that, to the degree that if done right, you would end up with a self-paying mortgage by using Bitcoin. We'll go all the way down the road, but you can do a lot with it. So why do we say there is a difference? Because cryptocurrencies can have unlimited supply. They are generally controlled by a handful of people, and you young folks will appreciate this whole meme coin madness, like you could get Dogecoin or this coin or that coin. There's a bunch of foolishness going on, right? 2 or 3 people create it. They have like 60 billion of them, and they own the majority. They convince you it's a good idea. If you watch an influencer, hey, buy this coin, you're about to get scammed. Because what they do is they let you buy in, the price goes way up, then they sell all of theirs. Guess who's left holding the bag? That is the danger of a centralized cryptocurrency. Now, we're not giving financial advice, obviously, but we're giving common sense advice. Right? And now, as I say that, we're going to move on. I want you to think about what we just said about crypto being centralized and everything else like that. What other operation do you know of that does exactly the same thing? The Federal Reserve. Ooh. We're going to have some parents mad at us. Kidding. You guys are good. All right. So we talked about trade and barter. It's powerful. Julianna, this is you. Yes, all the way.
So I helped launch 2 trade and barter companies. What's trade and barter? It's just another currency. Do you know that there are thousands upon thousands of businesses out there that are using a different currency outside of the dollar bill that you have in your pocket? They're literally doing business with each other with another currency called trade and barter. The awesome thing about trade and barter is if I have a widget and that widget costs me $1 to make, but I sell it for $10, I have a $9 profit. Well, if I'm using the trade and barter currency, right, in cash, I'm really only spending $1 to get the other currency. But now I have $10 worth of this trade and barter currency that I can now spend it on anything that I want. So as a business owner, it really only costs me $1 and my product to get $10 worth of another service to come do something for me. Be able to use your wholesale instead of retail. Anybody know what the difference between wholesale and retail is? Wholesale is what it costs you, retail is what you sell it for. Okay? So if it costs you $1 to make it, and you sell it for $10 retail, you've made $9 of profit. Okay? Wholesale versus retail. Trade and barter is really amazing. And you can trade and barter individually. You and I can do a trade and barter. Did you guys ever watch the video where the guy has a paperclip and he keeps trading it and eventually he gets a house? Trade and barter, baby!
That's so good. I would, if I could just Julianna does such a good job with this. She actually launched 2 trade and barter companies, right? So she has such an intricate understanding. I just want to point out that everything she just described is not backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. It is backed by something real and tangible. We see a theme, yes?
RC is so right. So if you think about our fiat currencies backed by nothing, right? The trade and barter currency, though, is I have products. So when I have trade and barter monies in my hand, I've got products in my storage to support the fact that I have this much money worth. It's backed by my inventory. Fiat money is not backed by anything. Trade and barter money is.
So, as we land the plane here, we talked about stewardship, right? This is the part of the story where you are responsible. You are now a watchman, right? Because now you know what's going on, and you know more than when you walked in. So what are your marching orders as we move forward?
Before you do marching orders.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to tell them about how we're helping with the gold-backed currency for the state of Florida.
Oh, please, yeah.
So RC and I have been up in Tallahassee helping an organization called Sound Money. They have what's called the Sound Money Act. Each state, we have to fix some laws and whatnot, but each state can have its own gold-backed currency. And right now, there's 11 states or 13 states that are fighting for. I think there are 2 states that now have their own currency. Can you imagine if we had our own currency, the state of Florida, and it was backed by gold? RC and I are really, as Gen Xers, we feel a responsibility to hand over a society and a culture to you that's worthy of you guys, okay? Having the alternative currencies, having a parallel economy, having each other in a community, I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. You guys look to your left and look to your right. Those are your brothers and your sisters, right? When things start to happen, you've got each other to support each other. You're developing your own parallel economy, your own way of being able to do things, right? That's why I love what Principal has done with you guys. I mean, there's some tradition in what you're doing, but yet there's some untradition in what's happening here. You guys learning these types of things is really important because we want you to be so educated, not indoctrinated, right? Not that you can just regurgitate information, but that you really understand what you're learning. And that's what my biggest takeaway from seeing all you guys in your classrooms was you guys were really learning in a way that was just so amazing. Same thing with parallel economies. These are the things that other kids are not being taught unless we teach it. And we're looking to you guys to say, you're our voice pieces. You're the ones that are going to be talking about parallel economies and about having gold-backed currency and the importance of, you know, supporting the community and what does that really mean. We want you guys, your age group, to be doing that. Because we know that you guys, like our grandparents, were very conservative. A lot of you females, you want to stay home. You want to be a stay-at-home mom. Maybe you want to homeschool your children. All the boys, I'm sure all of you want to be able to support your family on your own income and have extra left over, right? We're fighting so that you guys can do that. That's why the parallel economy is so important and why your voices are so important and why we're sitting here with you and not with the adults. We don't want to sit with the adults as much as we want to empower you guys to do and have the community and the culture that you want to have. It's your voices that are important out there. So if we're going to tell, you know, the economy, the government, what it is that we want to have happen, parallel economies is just one of those things that we want to have happen. It gives us the control. Okay.
I have another question about the go back. I took notice on one of them, they have 1.5, and then on the other one it has a whole one.
Different denominations. So it goes all the way up to, what, 100? And they're all worth different amounts depending on how much gold is in it. Obviously, the 100 has a lot more gold than the 1. The 1 has twice as much as the half. Okay, so that's why the 1 is worth about 6 and change, and the half is worth about 3 and change. And just make sure that both of those go back to Miss Randolph because they're hers.
So, oh, go ahead.
Each state having their own currency, would that be a repeat of paper notes or would it be different?
Great question. So, a dear friend of ours who's based in Dallas, Kevin Freeman, he does a TV show called The Economic War Room, and he wrote a book called Pirate Money. What he discovered in the U.S. Constitution is that states can mint their own currency, and I'm coming to your actual address, but I want to give you some background. They can mint their own currency as long as it is gold and silver. That is the only requirement. So what would it be like? What is happening in Tallahassee right now, what we've been lobbying for, is to remove the sales tax from gold and silver, and for the state of Florida to create its own gold and silver depository, where they would be custodians. Instead of a bank lending out your money, their only job is to be responsible for the gold and silver that you put in. In exchange, you would get a debit card, just like you have today, and you would be able to use it. So that's the logic for it, is that we could do notes, and Goldback has actually solved some of that with the Goldback notes. But that for the most part, people are accustomed to using debit cards, and that you would continue that, except you'd be able to pay in gold and silver versus fiat money. Does that help?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
So when you're saying that states can make their own different go backs, meaning, so if Florida has their own and Georgia has their own, will we have to, let's say, put our money into a different type of currency?
No, good question. So gold and silver is gold and silver. What's being worked out now, because the federal government has been relatively silent on this, but what we believe they're going to try to do as more states adopt it, is they're going to screen interstate commerce, and I'll quickly explain why. If you can imagine every state having its own gold and silver depository and you being able to do this, guess who gets left out in the cold? They don't like that so much. So when the federal government does not like something that the states do, they will screen interstate commerce, because the federal government is they're responsible for commerce between the states. So what we believe is going to happen is that the states are going to come up with their own interstate packs so that you could use your gold and silver debit card for the depository in Florida, in Georgia, to make a transaction without a problem. So I'm a bit of a historian, so context is important for me. Go ahead.
That's a good question that she had. This is something that shows up in history, that, you know, the different notes, the different banks.
Ah, yes.
In the history, the bank in California have a different, you know, note from in Georgia, and then you're stuck. You got paid a lot of money in Georgia, but you can't use it anymore. You can't. So he's saying it's going to be different.
Yeah, they're working to solve that problem, because there was a time where it was like the Wild West, with states having their own money.
The awesome thing about the states having their own money is it gives us, the people, back control. Most people think that the government, it starts from the president all the way down to us. No. Government starts with us. They work for us. We are the government. We gave the states the rights to do X, Y, and Z. We gave the federal government the rights to do LMNOP. And if they do anything else outside of LMNOP, they're in violation. They're not allowed to do that. It has to go back to the states, and it goes back to us, the people. We, the people, are the government. Don't ever forget that. Your politicians work for you. Right? So your voice is that important when you understand that everything stems, the culture stems, everything stems from what you guys decide. But you guys need to have a voice so that the culture knows exactly what it is that you're wanting.
Which really sums up the slide that's on the screen, so I don't need to speak to it, because we talked about your marching orders and your stewardship. You're already paying attention. You're going to share with everyone else. You're going to make sure that all of your stuff is in line. And you're going to go not only tell that story, but we believe that you're going to show people just how effective this is. Because I can promise you this, as Juliana mentioned, public servants who hold elected office work for you, not the other way around. Even though some of them would lead you to believe that. That is not a political statement, that is a statement of fact. Okay? You understanding that makes all the difference. Because I promise you this, if the students of Victory Christian Academy wanted to do something in the city of Orlando, and you put together a plan and you moved as a block of people, they would say, when do you want to start? That's how much power you have. And that is why the state of Florida or Utah or New York or wherever was designed specifically for those reasons, and then created a federal apparatus to handle few and defined things. The federal government does way more than it's supposed to today. It's only supposed to do not that much. And then the rest is on the states. That's you. And that was done by design because you were in control.
So go back to your question about what would happen with these big Publix and Walmarts and whatnot. Exactly what is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be hyper-local. We weren't designed to have these huge corporations. We were designed to be hyper-local. You know, we've become disconnected from each other because we're looking at the big box stores instead of looking at each other going, what product do you made and what service do you have and what product do you made, so that we can buy amongst each other to support and give the monies to each other. Not to big corporations that are making all the monies, right, and giving us these products. We should be taking care of ourselves, doing that internally.
And there's a lot of power that, I'm going to come back to your question in just a second. There's a lot of power that when I started in the broadcast business, this is going to sound funny, but it's true. I started doing like agricultural reports. You guys ever heard like hog futures and stuff like that? And I was like, this is insane. Like, who does this? Because I grew up in San Francisco, right? There's a lot of money and commerce in that. Every place is different and unique and has something unique. So those big box stores would conform to the people that they're serving in a given place. All right, guys, so that's a wrap on the presentation part. We do want to take questions. We want to leave some time for that. So guys, thank you so much for being here and being attentive and engaging.